All right, we're going to dive into a really powerful idea today, one that comes from the book Controlling Emotions Never Relies on Suppression. And it's an idea that basically flips a lot of old school advice completely on its head. It suggests that when it comes to our feelings, guidance, not forceful control, is what really matters. You've heard it a million times, right? Get a grip, just calm down, don't be so sensitive. But what if, and this is a big what if that's literally the worst advice you could possibly get? What if trying to wrestle our feelings into submission is the very thing that makes them so powerful and overwhelming in the first place? You know, our default setting when a tough emotion like anger or sadness shows up is to just shove it down. We try to ignore it, pretend it's not there, lock it in a box. But the core argument we're digging into today is that this whole strategy of suppression, well, it's pretty much guaranteed to backfire. Okay, so let's really pull back the curtain on this so-called suppression myth. Why is just holding it all in such a recipe for disaster? Well, it really all comes down to a huge misunderstanding of what our emotions are even for. I mean, think about the crazy double standard we have. When we feel joy or love, we roll out the red carpet. We want more of that positive energy. But the second that sadness or fear walks in the door, our first instinct is to squash it, to get rid of it, like it's some kind of glitch in the system. And that, right there, is where the trouble starts. So to get us out of that trap, the book gives us this really brilliant way to picture our inner world. Instead of seeing your mind as some kind of chaotic battleground, I want you to imagine it's a kingdom. And this kingdom is ruled by a very unique kind of leader. See, in this kingdom, you've got two main players. First, there's the emperor. This is your raw, unfiltered emotion. He's impulsive, he's powerful. He kind of just wants to play all day and makes decisions in a split second. Then you've got the minister. This is your reason, your logic. The minister is strategic, plays the long game, and is always there to offer some wise advice. And listen, the goal here isn't a military coup. It's teamwork. And this is the absolute game changer. The job of your rational mind, your inner minister, isn't to be a prison guard for the emperor. No, the job is to understand why the emperor is so fired up or so upset in the first place. It's about shifting from suppression to a kind of compassionate curiosity. Now, I know what you might be thinking. This whole emperor and minister thing, it's a nice story, right? But here's the cool part. It's not just a metaphor. It's actually a pretty fantastic way to describe how our brains are literally wired. So let's look at the science behind the story. So, neuroscientists have found that our brains have basically two highways for processing emotions. First, there's the fast path. Imagine a guard on the castle wall just screaming, "Intruder!" It's an instant, unfiltered alarm bell. Then there's the slow path. This is when the message finally gets to the wise minister who can take a breath, analyze the situation, and plan a smart response. But here's the catch. The fast path is, well, it's fast. We're talking lightning fast. Your emotional emperor basically hits the big red panic button before your rational minister has even had a chance to open the email. And that's exactly why we so often react in ways that 10 minutes later we deeply regret. The author tells this perfect, kind of funny story about this from when he was 16. He calls it the pancake incident. A totally minor disagreement with a girl over a pancake just explodes into this huge, dramatic fight. His fast path brain completely took over, turning something tiny into a potential catastrophe, before his slow path brain could chime in and say, "Hey, you sure this is really about the pancake?" We've all had a pancake moment, haven't we? Okay, so that's a small emotional hijack. But what happens when things completely go off the rails, when we're totally overwhelmed? We call it an emotional breakdown. It feels like the end of the world. But what if we're looking at it all wrong? What if it's actually something else entirely? The author shares this really intense story about a friend of his, a super brilliant PhD student. On the outside, his life looked perfect. And then one day, out of the blue, his girlfriend of many years just leaves him. And the emotional fallout was, well, it was catastrophic. He got to this point of absolute, total despair, and he called his ex and threatened to jump from the roof of a university building if she didn't come back to him. I mean, this is the very definition of an emotional collapse. His rational mind, his minister, was just gone, completely offline, and his emotional emperor was in a state of pure panic, basically ready to burn the whole kingdom to the ground. It's a terrifying place to be, for sure. But hold on a second. What if that moment of complete and utter collapse wasn't a failure? What if it was actually a necessary event? What if a breakdown is really a breakthrough in disguise? And this idea is so powerful. An emotional crisis is your brain's emergency brake. It's a brutally effective system that literally forces you to stop and finally deal with the deep-seated problem you've been pushing down and ignoring for way too long. It's not a bug in the system, it's a feature. So, the million-dollar question is, how do we avoid getting to that crisis point? How do we actually step up and become that wise minister for our inner emperor? Well, it all comes down to a practical three-step strategy. All right, here's your new playbook. Step 1, just listen to the emperor. When a big emotion comes up, don't fight it, don't judge it, just acknowledge it. Hello, anger, I see you're here. Step 2, understand the need. Get curious. Ask, okay, emperor, what's really going on? What are you afraid of? What do you actually need right now? And finally, step 3, guide with strategy. Once you know the why, you bring in your rational minister to figure out the smartest, most constructive how. And you've got to remember, the point of all this is not to wage war on your feelings. You're not trying to defeat the emperor. You're trying to build a partnership. Think of it this way. Your emotion is the scout that tells you something important is happening, and your reason is the general who creates the brilliant plan to deal with it. So ultimately, this all comes down to one big question you can ask yourself. In your own inner kingdom, who's really running the show? Is it the impulsive emperor making all the rash decisions? Or is there a wise minister at the helm, guiding the ship towards a better, more stable future? Turns out, the choice is yours.